Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Folks, today is Thursday, May 21st, 2026. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. A possibly innocent man was spared from execution in Tennessee after executioners struggled for over an hour to establish an intravenous line. Governor Bill Lee said the state would not attempt to execute Tony Carruthers again for at least a year, allowing his attorneys more time to prove his innocence. Democratic National Committee has released the party's autopsy on the 2024 election following significant pressure to do so. What does it show? Lots of different things. They blame Biden's White House for not doing more with Vice President Kamala Harris, but also shows you a lot of white strategists got millions of dollars. Very few black people. We'll talk with Vice President Harris's former communications director, Ashley Etienne, about this issue. Black Men Vote has published a new poll indicating an engagement gap among young black men in key states ahead of the 2026 midterms. I spoke with South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn about his state's efforts to eliminate his congressional seat, and also we talked about the importance of 18 and 39-year-old voters getting out to vote. In the race to fill Senator Mitch McConnell's seat, Congressman Andy Barr will face former State Representative Charles Booker. Booker will join us on the show. Plus, in tonight's Shop Black Star Network segment, we'll feature a college project that's now bringing flavors from the South American country of Guyana directly into American kitchens. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Folks, Democrat National Committee Chair Ken Martin faced tons of pressure to release the autopsy of the 2024 election. He initially said he wasn't going to do it, but they kept saying you must do so. So he did. The 192-page report outlines various issues that plagued the Democratic Party during the last presidential election. Some of the problems include messaging that created tensions with key constituencies regarding the economy, delays in organizing voters on the ground, and lack of alignment between the party's primary super PAC and then Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign. President Joe Biden and his political team, they were not spared. It also showed the massive amount of money that white Democratic strategists keep getting, and not a lot of black folks on that list. Ashley Etienne, former communications director of Vice President Kamala Harris, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi joins us right now in the studio. Glad to have you here. We talked about this here. You said that it needs to be released. And so what do you make of what they dropped?
Well, I think it's a complete failure of leadership on the part of Ken Martin. He had a choice. Instead of releasing a forward-looking document that laid out a strategy to address the bleeding support among black voters, the growing trust gap among black voters that we're seeing, to your point, you talked about the survey there. Instead, what he did was he released a report that was half-baked, that he critiqued. And he did it in order to save his ass rather than to actually lay out a vision for this party moving into the 2026 and the 2028 election to address some of the biggest, what I like to call the three-alarm fire that we're seeing within the Democratic Party that's not being talked about, again, which is that we're dealing with an identity crisis, we're bleeding support among our base voters, and we're not innovating in a way that sufficiently engages and mobilizes our key constituencies. That's why it's a failure, because Ken Martin made this whole report about Ken Martin. Meanwhile, democracy is failing. Meanwhile, black people are suffering the burdens of the failure of this particular party. 600,000 black women are out of a job, 8.5% unemployment, 400 years of black progress undermined in the last 2 weeks with the gutting of the VRA. He owes us an explanation as to how the money was spent.
There's 600,000 black women, also 800,000 black men.
Absolutely.
Both those numbers are up, so we can't ignore that. But here's the deal here, and this is what also jumps out. What you just laid out, true. But what you also have seen, though, are Democrats that have been winning elections all across the country.
Sure.
So the problem is the positioning as if the party's on fire, but when you look at these individual races, they've been winning.
Sure.
And I think this is where the disconnect is. There's a difference between national party. There's a difference between national party. When you start talking about presidential, Senate, and House, and then we start talking about local races, mayoral races, state races, where Democrats have been winning. And so those candidates have been crafting their own messaging, doing things their own way. So you got to explain how Democrats have been winning seats, picking up seats that Trump won, but then what is being said nationally. That's two different stories being told.
Absolutely. And so if you read the report, if you read between the lines of the report, what it says is that we have been winning elections despite the strength of the Democratic Party, despite the strength of its message, despite the strength of its infrastructure, that really what we're seeing is Republicans are losing elections. We're not winning elections. The Democratic Party now is polling at 28%. The lack of confidence within the Democratic Party is striking.
But hold on. I got to stop you there,
but let me make one more point, though, Roland.
That's national.
Okay, but let me make one point.
So the polling is really how they feel about Schumer and Jeffries and not local.
So when I talk about the black community suffering the burdens of the failure of this party, it's national. What we're seeing right now, the 600, 800,000, 8.5% unemployment, VRA, that's a national issue.
Right.
So it still matters nationally. The other reason why it matters is your viewers have to understand that this is a business, okay? It's an $8 billion business annually. And black folks get less than 1% of that money.
Yes.
So we're not investing in building black political power, which is why you're seeing the bleeding of black support, which is why black men are voting for an all-out races in double-digit numbers. We're also not innovating. We're not making investments in black media. We're not making investments in black influencers and black consulting firms. We're not making those types of investments that would equal out to better electoral outcomes for black people. So wherein we might be winning locally, we're failing nationally, which is having the biggest impact on black people.
Right, but this is the whole point.
And so we have to focus on that.
I understand that.
We should never let the party off the hook.
I'm not letting them off the hook. Yeah. But here's how I see when we look at these things.
Sure.
There's a difference between what regular and ordinary people are saying, doing out there, and then what's being said in D.C. and New York.
Absolutely.
It's a totally different deal.
Absolutely.
And so anytime I see those polls, anytime I see the dude on CNN, he's like, oh, my God, look at Democratic polling numbers. And then you go, but they won this mayoral race, they won this county commissioner race, they won this state race, they won this state race. And so what I think is happening is, look, every time I talk to Nikki Fried, her whole deal is, okay, whatever y'all doing in D.C., go right ahead.
Sure.
We're going to execute a different strategy here. And I think what you've seen are folks say, we're not getting the leadership that we think are deserving from national, so we're going to run this the way we think we should run it. Hold on. So what should be happening, national Democrats should be, I believe, listening more to what is working in different places. The mistake that I keep seeing, if we talk about narrative, they are allowing national media to craft the narrative that Mamdani is the future of the party. And I go, well, he won in New York, but the brother won in Cleveland.
Sure.
The brother won in Georgia. The brother won in Birmingham.
Well,
so there were other mayors who were elected beyond him. But national media, cable news shows, and broadcasts craft this whole thing as if, oh, it's all Mamdani. And I'm like, but it's not. And they're like, yeah, but he's the mayor of New York City. I'm like, yeah, but the mayor of Atlanta counts, the mayor of Cleveland counts, the mayor of Birmingham counts. And so I think what we are seeing are grassroots people saying, you know what? We can't wait on y'all anymore.
Absolutely.
We got to do our own thing. And that's what I think, what I see happening.
Okay, so can I just say this, because, you know, I've been doing this for 25 years. What we're seeing as it relates to black people and investments in black people is the same issues on the ground as we're seeing at the national level.
Oh, yeah.
A disinvestment in taking black voters for granted.
Well, you see it right here. This is the numbers. Pull a graphic on my iPad. We see it right here. The racial gap, the racial voting gap, is at its widest in 30 years.
Absolutely.
So anybody looking at this chart, and I've shown this numerous times, and you see it right here, right there, you see black or white voters, blue or black voters, and you see right there in 2008, 2012, in 2012, black voters voted at a higher rate than white voters. But then when you look at 16, 20, and 24, you see how it drops in 16?
Yes.
A steep drop. It goes back up in 20. That was largely because of COVID and the expansion of how people access the ballot. And then you see the tremendous drop in 2024. That right there. So for African Americans, for white voters, it is, last election is around 70%. You see right there with black voters, it fell just under 60%. The reality is that gap cannot continue if Democrats can expect to win. And Latino gap is even further lower than ours. They were at about 55% in 2020. They dropped down to 50% in 2024.
So can I say there's a direct correlation between where the Democratic Party invests its money? To your point, you made the point about white consultants running away with all the money. There's speculation that decisions were made in the last cycle to line people's pockets rather than win the election. A good example of that. Decisions were made to put money on television, which we know, again...
broadcasting cable, linear, as opposed to digital and on the ground to do massive get out the vote.
And the reason why is because people at the highest level got kickbacks from putting the money on television.
Well, for people who don't understand the game, those consultants, their fees come from media buys. They don't get the same fees if you're putting it on the ground in
Philadelphia to turn out black voters.
So the strategists, what they do is they tell campaigns, no, TV radio, TV radio, because that's where they make their money.
And so my point is there's a direct correlation between who's making the money, who's making the decision, and black electoral outcomes.
Oh, yeah.
There's a direct correlation. And so my point is we've got to do exactly what Vice President Harris said recently when she was at NAN. She said that black voters need to become more transactional. And I firmly believe that. And so in this moment, on the heels of this particular report, my recommendation to us would be to coalesce black power to ask these very hard questions, which is, how was the money spent? Where was the money spent? Why are we not making strategic investments that are innovating how we engage black voters? To your point, the reason why we're bleeding support among black voters is also because we don't have any level of intimacy with black voters. We wait until the 11th hour consistently.
The report
consistently says this, consistently waiting to the 11th hour to engage black people. And then what we do is we straddle them with obligation.
And the report talked about that.
Exactly.
And in fact, you talk about the numbers. So go to my iPad. This is a graphic from you see combined IE spending, independent expenditures. So the top 30 payees from both parties account for 74% of the total IE. You see right here, Waterfront Strategies, Inc., Democrats, way more. They more than double the nearest Republican group at $861 million. So Waterfront Strategies got 23% of all the money over a 12-year period.
Across the ecosystem.
So they got $861 million. Then you see 4 Republican companies. Then you see Bully Pulpit Interactive, Amplify Media, OTG Strategies. They're next, 85, 78, 71 million. Then you go down, Targeted Platforms, C+, Gambit, Great American Media, and Wavelength, Sage Media, MVAR Media, Bernie Consulting, SKDK, Knickerbocker, and the reality is none of those are black firms.
None of them are black.
Very few of them, very few even have a black principal. And so what then happens is when the decisions are made, listen, we're not at the table. They nickel and dime, and I can tell you there are a couple of firms on here I see who contacted me and came at me with small amounts of money, and I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not. You want me to run ads for how long on my platform? I remember one of these firms offered $8,000, and they wanted ads run for like 2 weeks, and I'm going, are you crazy? And then one time it was $10,000, and they thought that lasted like 45 days. I was like, are y'all crazy?
Put it in context. How much are they spending on?
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. And so when you got these yahoos out here, the only reason people know how much I got in advertising because I refused to deal with these firms because they were nickel and diming. I said to the Harris campaign, if you're going to take out advertising, then you need to pay me direct because I'm not dealing with those firms. One of these firms, literally, I got the email. They wanted me to sign an NDA before I even discussed what the potential ad buy. I said, I'm not signing an NDA. And so these are the games that they actually play with us. And so when you had these black people like, well, you got $350,000. I'm like, the total black spend, the total black-owned spend was $22 million. That's all black-owned media. The total from the campaign alone, they dropped some $600-800 million. We ain't even talking about that PAC where they spent some money as well. So these black folks are tripping, and I'm like, $600 million from the campaign. Black folks, black-owned media got 22, and y'all. And I even had some black people say, you shouldn't even get advertising. You should be doing it just because. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Comcast, Disney, Sinclair, Tegna, Nexstar, iHeart, Cumulus, none of those media companies run ads for free, but some of y'all want black-owned media to run stuff for free. That's stupid.
But my point is the reason why this is outrageous and we should be outraged by these numbers is because we, again, are bearing the burdens of the failure of this party. These decisions that are being made, okay, they're on our back, okay? Again, should I run through the numbers? 8.5% unemployment, VRA gone.
Right.
We no longer have voting rights. This is why this party owes us an explanation.
But this
decisions.
Report does not even name names. Part of the deal is the white, we got to say what it is.
Sure,
the
but
white
this
Democrat,
is actually, let me just
the
tell
white
you,
strategists who control the apparatus.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, I've been in the party for 25 years. It's the same 5 to 8 people that make all the strategic decisions and that make the money at the end of the day, okay? And are not held accountable for their actions.
Including the few black people who are in the room who are not speaking up even louder.
Okay, I don't even want to get into them because that's a whole nother
but my
level
whole
of
point
betrayal. I don't even. You're right.
I get it, but my point is
it's a level of betrayal.
But my point is, if we gonna call it out, we call it out.
Yeah, we got to call it out. And so what I'm saying is we need to, on your show, you've got the power to do it. We need to
I've been doing it for years.
I know, but I'm just saying we need to coalesce and demand that the party answer these questions because, again, white people, these white consultants aren't affected the way we are.
Right.
They're buying boats in the third houses, okay? Meanwhile, we can't even eat. Meanwhile, we don't have voting rights. We're trying to figure out what are we going to do across the South, and that's where the migration of black voters are headed. So they owe us an explanation. And so before Ken steps down, because I do believe he's likely going to step down, he and the party owes us an explanation, and we need to demand it. As Vice President has said, we need to become more transactional, become clear-eyed that this is a business and the whole party rides on our back, and somehow we are bearing the cost of their poor decisions to line their pockets and not win the election.
Well, that also has to happen when the African Americans who are also players in the party, meaning those CBC members, meaning those black delegates, meaning those black mayors. Because what often happens is they're making requests as opposed to saying, no, we ain't moving. I'll never forget 2016, Fudge, Congresswoman Fudge. It was a story in the New York Times when she called out the Hillary Clinton campaign. This was in October, way too late. But she was like, yo, y'all want us to volunteer.
It happened in 20, it happened in 24,
but I'm giving,
same story, probably the same member.
I'm giving a specific example. Okay. She called them out. She said, wait a minute. Y'all want us to volunteer, but they're getting paid.
Sure.
And my whole deal is, that's not an October conversation. To me, that's a January conversation. That's the previous December. Right now, we know
This is a now
we know the
conversation.
midterm is 2026. It should be happening now, and the conversations for 28 should happen the day after the midterm is over.
Right, absolutely. And my point is, I've been in these war rooms. In every cycle, we're begging for money to turn out black voters, specifically black men, 30 days out from an election.
And it's stupid.
And to your point, everyone who you just named is fully aware of that dynamic. Why is that consistently the dynamic? We have to, somebody has got to explain that to me.
Absolutely.
As a level of indifference within the party, a level of resentment toward black voters. But the reality is we have the power in the dynamic. You can't win our home state of Texas, Tallarico, I know he's coming on your show tomorrow, without black voters. So the question has to be, this is a now conversation with you right now. What black consultants do you have on? What's the
same
strategy?
with North Carolina in Cooper. The same
Ohio?
with Ossoff in Georgia.
Exactly.
The same with Sherrod Brown in Ohio.
We've got to stand 10 toes down on that.
Oh, listen.
And I know you do.
Listen, I've been saying for the longest that we're operating as sharecroppers, where we're tilling the soil and other folks are reaping the harvest. And for the folks who understand, it is a business. And when I listen to some of these silly Simon Negroes who say, oh, you shouldn't be demanding this, I'm like, what are you talking about? The reality is media companies are getting paid. Consulting, polling firms, all of this entire ecosystem.
Can I just adjust your talking point there? No, the reality is you need black voters, and you talk directly to black voters, okay? Who knows better how to turn out black voters than black consultants? If black consultants at the table, you're at the table. So they try to keep all of us at the table so that they can make the money. But again, when they lose the election, who's to blame for it?
Right. And we know we ain't even at no Republican table.
Absolutely.
So that's the case.
No. Black Republicans make money now. Let's be clear.
Well, again, some.
Yes.
Because I've had
and they're clearly
because I've had conversations with them, and trust me, their complaint is very similar.
Sure,
to ours.
but can I say one thing though? They're trending in the right direction among black voters. We're trending in the wrong direction. They're going up. They're double digits every cycle.
Yeah,
we're going down. That's the problem.
Right, and also they're going down double digits because also our share is going down, and so the bottom line is our share has to increase. But again, it comes down to a money game.
Intentionality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
You got to go.
I do.
I know.
See you later.
I've been trying to close. I'm watching the
I got a
clock
lot to
for
say.
2 minutes. I'm like, you got to go to go do another company. Ashley Etienne, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Go ahead, walk out, go behind me. Go behind
very
me.
good.
I want to bring in my panel right now, Dr. Greg Carr, Department of African American Studies, Howard University out of D.C., Nicole Robinson, political law attorney and strategist, Cameron Trimble, CEO, Hip Politics Media, and former White House senior advisor. Glad to have all three of you here. Greg, I want to start with you. When we talk about this being a business, I can't tell you how many discussions that I have been in. In fact, just the other day, Tesla and Figaro had posted something on her Instagram page of a video that Isaac Hayes III did, where he played a clip from Jason Lee on Ebro show, talking about lack of investment, and you literally had people, Greg, in the chat saying, "Oh, Roland's a journalist; he shouldn't be getting advertising." Tesla responds by saying, "What are you talking about? He owns a media company. So you're saying don't get paid for ads?" And these other people were like, "Well, yeah, but he shouldn't do it." And I responded, I said, "Wait a minute, do y'all even understand how any of this works?" I'm like, "Clearly y'all don't." I'm like, every single newspaper, website, podcast, television, local station, network, radio station, syndicated, all have sales teams, and they all get paid. In fact, every publicly traded company, every single one, when they have their quarterly earnings calls, they say, "Oh, we anticipate in the third and the fourth quarter an 8, 10, 15, 20% increase in revenue due to political ad spending." Every single one. And so I sit here and go, what the hell are y'all talking about? And then people are like, "Oh, you got $350,000 for ads." Guess what? Comcast got paid for ads. Disney got paid for ads. The entire media ecosystem is built on advertising. And of the $400 billion spent every year on advertising, black-owned media gets 0.5 to 1%. And so I'm like, how can y'all talk about build black-owned businesses, grow black-owned businesses, create more jobs if we get frozen out of the political money? That to me is insane.
It is insane, Roland, and it's it's also it's immature. Let me just say this directly, and I've said it before. You've been talking about this. You're the only person I've ever seen talk about it, quite frankly, in any platform. Let me be very clear. Like I said, I was just down there Monday. All of us who have been to Black Star Network studio understand this, and I think everybody who might be confused about this would understand this immediately. You're 2 blocks from the White House. You do everything in-house. You have a staff. Would you want people to work for free, y'all? $350,000 ain't no money.
Got 17 people. 17 people.
Come on, man. Come on. And I understand that they give you the second floor there, 2 blocks from the White House for free. So you don't have to wait. Is that? Well, you pay rent, right?
Yep.
You
20, yep. Okay. $27,000 a month.
Okay. And every piece of equipment you have in there is owned by BSN. So y'all act like Roland Martin got $350,000 and went on vacation. Please understand, we need to stop being a race of children. You understand? Now, because of what's on Mom Donnie and the people in New York are doing just over the last few months, you got a billionaire like Jeff Bezos screaming bloody murder, act like he care about a school teacher somewhere or a nurse, now saying the bottom half of everybody should pay no taxes. They got the billionaires running crazy because the only thing these people in this capitalist country care about is money. And unfortunately, we find ourselves, as we just heard Ashley say, and as you all were talking about, in an impossible situation where we have to determine for ourselves what is in the best interest of our liberation. When you went to Montgomery, I was just talking to some folks with the Fred Gray Institute in Montgomery earlier this week. And I said, there was no footage anywhere that has been shown. Your staff was saying this to me when I was down there Monday. There's no footage anywhere that's been shown covering that all roads lead to the South convening, except yours, because you're the only person on the ground. And that was invaluable. We're going to look back in a few months and say that moment in Montgomery in many ways was the starting gun. And we wouldn't see anything about it except a few clips from some local news in Montgomery had not you been there. And now you're sending Roro-mobiles to other places to do this. I just want to understand from anybody who would criticize you, instead of getting $350,000, it should be $3.5 million or $35 million, where you could really open up. I want to know from any critic, what do you think Roland is doing with the money? And then we dance, because every time you talk about money, man, you take it down to the penny like we're all some kind of way your internal audit system. It just doesn't make sense, brother.
I sit here and try to walk people through this nonsense, Cameron. And when you look at this report, the report covers a number of different things. It talks about how the Harris campaign wrote off rural America, really focusing on suburban voters. Well, guess what? We talked about this on the show. When we went to North Carolina, we specifically did not go to suburban areas. We did not go to Raleigh. We did not go to Charlotte. We literally cut the map in half and said, we're going to be in East North Carolina, the Black Belt. When we went to Georgia, covering the Warnock race in 2022, we didn't do shows in Atlanta. We did shows in other parts of the state, knowing full well that's where other black folks are. And so what people have to understand when you examine this report, and it was messy, it's all over the place, and I absolutely agree with Ashley, there should be a vision pointing forward. And I'll be honest, when they wanted him to release this report, I thought it was a stupid time to release it then, because it was in the middle of the shutdown. Democrats had Republicans on the run, and I said, why in the hell would you switch the story and the narrative and when you sitting here winning it? That was just dumb. And so that's the other thing I think, Cameron, for a lot of these Democrats, especially these people in D.C. who were pounding the table to release the report. I'm sitting there going, do y'all even pay attention? Do you even read the room? So we know how white media works. They were going to be wall to wall on the DNC autopsy report playing the blame game. And so Democrats have a knack for snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory. Cameron? Cameron, if you don't hit that damn mute button, I don't how the hell your ass run a digital media company and every week you on mute? Can y'all, is it us or him? Cameron, it's you. Cameron, fix your little system. Nicole, I'm gonna go to you.
Look, this is not the time for the Democratic Party to be infighting. Our rights are getting stripped away every single day. And for the Democrats sitting at home reading the headlines about this report, they're feeling hopeless. They're feeling like the Democratic leadership is not going to be able to get it together by the midterms. I mean, they're releasing reports without sources, without citations. Like, this is ridiculous. But, I mean, I do hope that Democratic leadership pays attention to the findings in this report, because although the midterms are coming up pretty soon, there is still some time to pay attention to the voters that have been neglected for years. We cannot let anyone sit this out. And so the Democratic Party truly needs to get it together well before the midterms, because we don't have time for 30-day runs to try to capture more voters. We need to start working on these issues now.
All right, Cameron, you finally got your situation together?
I did, brother. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
A couple things that just some disclosures. One, I was definitely interviewed twice for this report, and I think everybody who is on the inside and understanding, as at least at the national level, who've been involved, understood this report was coming and had gotten previews and heard a lot of whispers as early as last summer about some of the things that came out in this report. And then two, specifically, and this is, I think, how our relationship really advanced in 2020, when I was the National Director of African American Paid Media and Advertising, we did a lot of direct negotiation and understanding, and there was a lot of education you gave me coming into that process. And something that this report showed me, and also knowing those numbers, the 2024 election cycle, Biden and then switching over to Harris raised almost $1 billion more than we did in the 2020 election cycle. But I can proudly say that me, as a person who had the decision-making power to run the paid advertising program, I still hold the record for the largest amount of spent on Black-owned media, even though the campaign after us raised almost $1 billion more.
And let's be real clear, that record was paltry. I mean, the amount was still, the fact that it was a record and the amount was paltry.
Because with a lot of viewers and just giving insight into how a lot of this works.
And let me say this here, Cameron, you right there, I ain't got a problem saying it. When the Biden folk, in that campaign, they initially came out 20,000. I was like, you out your mind. Then they came back at 100,000. You out your mind. 200,000. You out your mind. 300,000. I wasn't running ads from September to November for no $20,000. I know my worth. I know what other people pay. And it was like, I know what they also pay out. I'm like, here's the number. And I said no. And then even when we signed agreed to 300, I still called them out after they did. And people called me like, man, what's wrong? I was like, because the 300 was bullshit. I mean, I must call it what it is. But again, white media don't have to do that because they get millions. Millions.
And one of the things that I think, because I'm running through a lot of that for your viewers, because as a person who has been on the other side of that and had to make those decisions or had to sell those inside the building, in addition to working with so many different media companies, what often happens here is they look at raw numbers and they also don't look at impact or cultural impact. When you start thinking about the impact that you and several Black-owned media, and this is the Black-owned media space has only matured in the last 4 years between 2024 and now 26, with so many more digital outlets. At that time, you really just had yourself. You obviously had Urban One, TV One, but then the shade room was big, but it was nowhere as near as big as it was now. Hollywood Unlocked and so many of these other places that are social media or digital media first platforms did not exist. We didn't have fast channels that were Black owned to be able to advertise on. So now with so many more sites and with Black folks being spread across so many more places to reach, there is literally just a presidential campaign alone has the opportunity to seed at least 100 Black businesses and be the largest, be their largest advertising boost because they have cultural impact. And that's something that I'll tell a quick story that puts a fine point on this. When I asked my media buyers internally to get me a list of the Black-owned important podcasts in 2020, when I had my first smaller budget media plan, they came back with all these numbers, said, we can't find that many. And they gave me a number. I said, where's the read at? You know, everybody listens to Crystal and on the Read podcast. I'm like, I don't care what the numbers say. I know this is one of the most culturally impactful podcasts. That was back then. And those are the kind of things they're making these decisions programmatically or based on some spreadsheets and numbers and not understanding both the numbers and the cultural impact that happened.
Well, first of all, let's be clear. When we say they, we're talking largely young, white political operatives who have no idea of what happens in Black America. None, zero,
exactly.
I'm gonna come back to this conversation, but I do want to bring in Kentucky State Representative Charles Booker. I want to bring him in right now. He, of course, won the Democratic nominee. He's running for United States Senate there in Kentucky. And I want to get your thoughts on this as well, because the reality is, as a Black candidate, you also deal with this in terms of how the national party then tells you, oh, no. This is who's going to be your campaign manager, your communications director, your pollster. You have to use these people. And you're probably sitting here going, ain't none of those folks from Kentucky. They don't know this state. They don't know the media markets. And I've seen this. I've seen this happen with other Black candidates, Val Deming in Florida. I've seen this happen with Sherry Beasley in North Carolina. I can go on and on and on. And this is the problem with the entire ecosystem. And what they really want to do, and you can speak to this, and I just know this for a fact, what they really want to say is, hey, listen here, Booker, go on over there and you just campaign. We got this. We are running the campaign. You're the face of it, but we are running this. That's really how these things work.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be with you, brother. I appreciate your voice, and you're so right. You're having a conversation about how do we tell the story that actually changes things and empowers our community, which will uplift everyone. And as a Black candidate running for U.S. Senate in Kentucky, we fall in all the blind spots. We are often told that we perform, we turn out, we do the work, but our voices, our brilliance is exploited or is diminished. And a lot of people are frustrated with this status quo. And that's why this campaign is so important, because we're building it in spite of the big consultants or the dynamics that would say campaigns like this, candidates like me, should not lead, should not be at the forefront. But if you're lifting up the voices of regular people, if you're speaking to the needs people face, you're going to find a coalition ready to get behind you. And we've proven it. So you're exactly right. We have to uplift the platforms that tell the story. We have to uplift the candidates that tell the story. And we have to build the coalitions that will ensure that our businesses thrive, our communities thrive. And that requires a U.S. Senate that will actually work for us. Because, of course, we've had Mitch McConnell my entire life, and he has just sold us out over and over again. We're tired of all of that, and I appreciate you helping to shine the light.
And the thing here is, again, we're talking about how do you win. I mean, the reality is you have to look at and study the map. And when we talk about you running in Kentucky, and I say this all the time to a lot of people, you in Kentucky, you cannot run the same as somebody in Georgia. You can't run the same as somebody in Pennsylvania. When you run statewide, it's different than when you're running for a congressional race. And people really confuse this because you are appealing to different constituencies that at the end of the day, your job is to get one more vote than your opponent.
That's exactly right. There is no one set playbook for how you win. This is about building relationships, and that requires trust. It requires consistency. It requires showing up over and over again. It requires listening. It requires delivering results. And that's what I've done for years. The reason that I won this primary with the margin that I've had, and the reason that I've been in a statistical tie with Republicans this entire time, although they have outspent my campaign, is because I've earned trust. And that's what's important in our politics right now. We have to get back to building community, which means showing up on the ground, speaking to issues, not about partisan division, because whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, we're all getting screwed. And we need the type of leadership that understands our struggles, that can speak to our needs. And that's why my candidacy, I believe, is so critical and is inspiring so many new voters, because I come from the hood. I come from the struggle, food stamps and free lunch. I'm a type 1 diabetic, had to ration my insulin to feed my girls. I've lived a lot of the stories Kentuckians know well. And it's because of that, they see the policies I'm fighting for, and they know I really believe what I'm standing on. And that's why they're coming into this campaign in droves, and it's why we're going to win this race. But you're exactly right.
So let's talk about how do you win. Last time around, you lost to Amy McGrath. This time around, you beat her. When you ran against Senator Rand Paul, 2022, you lost by 24 points. That's huge. What have you learned, and what do you see as the path to victory? And the reality is, listen, black numbers are not big in Kentucky. So you're going to have to convince a lot of white voters to vote for you. What is your messaging to them? What is your strategies to reach them? Because the reality is the reality. Many white voters in red states who are poor often vote against their own economic interest. I remember stories from 2016 and 2020. There was a woman in Kentucky after the 2016 race. She said, "Oh my God, I'm so happy Trump won, and I'm glad he's going to get rid of Obamacare, but he bet not touch the Affordable Care Act." And I'm sitting there going, "You have no idea it's the same." I see Scott Jennings on CNN touting Kentucky, but I look at those numbers of the people who are on food assistance, who are on Medicare and Medicaid, huge numbers in Kentucky. How are you going to flip those people and convince them to vote for you, a black male Democrat?
Well, you know, some of the reason that we are going to win this race is actually Donald Trump. Honestly, and everything that you said is right. This has been a work in progress. I've told folks this is like Rocky III for me. We've been laying foundation. We've been building relationships. We've introduced a new concept of politics because Mitch McConnell was elected when I was 2 weeks old. So we've had a status quo that has really screwed us over my entire life. And a lot of folks have just concluded things won't change because they've been the same for so long. So showing up in community over the years, I've been able to build trust. But one of the things that's really important right now, people ask, well, what's different for you, Charles? My message is the same. That's the power of this campaign. What's different is everything else around us. Every single cut that Trump has made, every decision that he's made that has hurt farmers, that is hurting those factory workers, that's hurting our veterans, that's hurting people that are trying to get health care, we're being hit hard in Kentucky. And they know it's not Joe Biden. They know it's not Barack Obama. They see Donald Trump, and they realize that he's trying to protect the Epstein files instead of protecting their children. And so when you see these No Kings demonstrations around Kentucky and around the country, but especially here, it's not just Democrats that are out there. These are lifelong Republicans. There's a reason that people have been taking up their Trump signs and putting down Booker signs because they're so fed up with the status quo. They thought Trump was going to drain the swamp. Now, a lot of us understand through the lens of race and history that he was BSing. But we know the truth. A lot of folks now are realizing it as well, and they're saying, well, what do we do? And they're seeing my campaign as an answer because I'm not just here to tear down Donald Trump. We can spend all day, all year, years tearing him down. We need to hold him accountable, but we also need a vision to deliver for us. And that's why organized labor is behind me. That's why grassroots organizations are behind me. So what's different now is this is an open seat. This isn't an incumbent. Mitch McConnell's leaving, thank goodness. And now we have the chance to really lean in at a time when people are hurting, now more than ever, to shine the light on what's possible. And it's inspiring hope. And man, I'm proud to tell this story because I know this is a story the country needs to see. And I'm asking everyone to go to charlesbooker.org and help us do this. This is funded by the people. It's built by the people. It's a testament to the people. And it's exactly why we're going to win.
We're going to need, you're going to need lots of money. And what often happens is national donors, they go, is that winnable? And we talk about the map, and this is the conversations that I've heard. I've heard Georgia's a priority, North Carolina's a priority, Ohio's a priority, Maine is a priority. And then the next tier, they say Iowa, Alaska. Then it's like, well, Texas, Florida, Kentucky, they pretty much, okay, we're going to lose those. So how do you convince national donors, big money donors, but even also small donors, that Kentucky is actually winnable? Because they look at Amy McGrath, veteran, pilot, all this sort of stuff. She ran against McConnell. She raised an insane amount of money and got crushed by him last time.
Well, it's twofold. One, I understand the cynicism. I'm a lifelong Kentuckian, and I understand that in a lot of conversations, we're not even at the table. So I get it. But what my ask is, if we're seeing what's happening in this country and we're seeing what's happening globally, we have to compete everywhere. And we're making the case easy because we've built the infrastructure. We have mobilized new voters. We've been training people for years. My organization, Hood to the Holler, has been helping to empower folks who got their rights restored so that they can engage the democratic process. We're expanding the map. And in 22, when I was the nominee for Senate, a lot of people reflect on that. Yes, we did not win at the ballot box, but we outperformed Amy McGrath's campaign, which was one of the most well-funded Senate campaigns in history, with about $6.7 million. So we showed what can happen if you engage people, even when we didn't have the money. And now with this being an open seat, knowing that we need to flip the Senate, if we do the math, we flip Kentucky, we flip the Senate. So we have a state that is being crushed by Trump. People are fed up. They're mobilizing with my campaign. We have the infrastructure to lead them to the ballot box. Now we just need a little bit of investment. We're showing what we can do a lot with a little. And so I'm asking folks to take a chance anyway, because what we see from Trump is that there is no bottom and that they're not going to stop because it's the right thing to do. The gutting of the Voting Rights Act, that's brought to you by Mitch McConnell. Donald Trump is brought to you by Mitch McConnell. So if you don't think Kentucky is important, remember what Kentucky has led to with Mitch McConnell 4 years. Give me the chance to help clean up this mess, because if we flip Kentucky, we flip the U.S. Senate, and we're ready to do it.
Indeed, indeed. Charles Booker, certainly good luck. Again, where can people get more information regarding your campaign?
Go to charlesbooker.org. Thank you for your investment.
All right. I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Always, brother.
Going back to my panel, I want to talk about this race and, again, continue our discussion regarding the DNC autopsy. One of the things that the autopsy report talked about is how the Biden political arm, the Biden White House, the political arm, commissioned polling to figure out how Dr. Jill Biden could be helpful to Joe Biden. But they never did anything like that for Vice President Kamala Harris. What's crazy to me, Nicole, is that the report lays out how they basically marginalized her. We talked about that in real time. We talked about the infighting and many of those derogatory stories that were coming out regarding Vice President Kamala Harris were actually coming from the West Wing, and some say from the East Wing as well. And so, this report, takes some shots at Biden. It takes some shots at Harris with her campaign. But it's also crazy. How do you have an autopsy, 192 pages, and you literally don't even mention Israel and Gaza as being a major issue of why they lost? That, to me, is just dumb.
There are so many things to unpack with this report. One thing that Democrats forget about is that Americans do care about international policy, because this is where our tax dollars are going. So for them to ignore the Israel and Palestine conflict was a clear misunderstanding of what Democrats actually care about. But back to Kamala Harris, for the whole Biden administration, Democrats were wondering where she was. We wanted to see her uplifted. We wanted to see her speaking more. But instead, she was kept in the shadows. And then we have President Biden stepping down very late in the game. and only giving Kamala Harris days to campaign, which is unprecedented. She did not have the support that she needed from Nancy Pelosi, President Biden, and I'm glad that this report was honest about that because a lot of Democrats try to hide from that. Hopefully, Democratic leadership can take something away from this in the 2028 elections, but we also need to be focusing on what we can do in the midterms. So this report, as juicy and salacious as it is, we need to use the findings now so that we can win in November.
Cameron, that really is the point. Ken Martin released his own statement regarding this particular report. And he shared it with the public, and I'm going to read that for you. Give me a second. And I think Ashley's on the money where he still has to articulate really what that vision is moving forward. What he said was, when I was elected DNC chair, I commissioned an after-action review of the 2024 election that I wanted to be honest and transparent and with actionable and specific takeaways for the future of the Democratic Party. When I received the report late last year, it wasn't ready for prime time, not even close, and because no source material was provided, it would have meant starting over. I could not, in good faith, put the DNC's stamp of approval on the report that was produced. After last November's massive Democratic wins, I didn't want to create a distraction, but by not putting the report out, I ended up creating an even bigger distraction. For that, I sincerely apologize. For full transparency, I'm releasing the report as we received it in its entirety, unedited and unabridged. It does not meet my standards, and it won't meet your standards, but I'm doing this because people need to be able to trust the Democratic Party and trust our word. And Cameron, I'll say it again. I got no problem. I thought it was stupid for Democrats to release the report last November. They had, for the first time, again, when I looked at 2025, it took Democrats 9 or 10 months to really finally have a message. That began to crystallize during the shutdown. It would have been stupid in the middle of a shutdown when they actually, when we look at the polling data, when they put Donald Trump on the ropes and Republicans to release a report. So now you're changing the story. That would have been dumb. Again, that was in November. But you've had the folks at Positive America and others who were pounding on Martin, release it. Then he finally does. And so, okay, fine. And then when you look at the report, I mean, he's absolutely right. When you actually look at the report, it's pretty incredible what happens. I mean, this is literally the disclaimer at the top. This document reflects the views of the author, not the DNC. The DNC was not provided with the underlying sourcing, interviews, or supporting data for many of the assertions contained herein and therefore cannot independently verify the claims presented. And then when you go through it, it's a lot of stuff, a leadership message, boom, that's missing. And then there's no executive summary. So it's a whole lot. And so it's like, hey, man, here, just take this thing and let's get on the way with it.
Yeah, I think two things. One, this report needed to happen, and in the spirit of what we got to flash back almost 2 years now in 2024, coming off of that devastating loss of Kamala Harris and so many other losses in losing the House and so many other losses. Everybody had heard all these huge numbers and all this money that was raised, and they thought we were there, and there was just a crushing defeat, and people wanted to know. But a point you made earlier, the D.C. Democrats, which I definitely have to stake claim to being here in the district often, but the DC, there was a disconnect between the DC and the national party and what people were feeling in the states and their local parties throughout. And everybody wanted some accountability to be held. Like, how did we lose this, considering all the negativity, considering what Trump was running against? Trump had been impeached. Trump was a 30+ time felon, like all these different things. And we could not believe it. So if you were running for the chair of the Democratic Party at the time, having an autopsy and holding people accountable on how that money was spent and how those resources and decisions were made was a critical point in order for Ken Martin to even be able to win. So that was a promise he and other candidates were making in 24. Fast forward to when this report was ready to be released, you're right, it should not have stopped the momentum of the shutdown. But it still did need to be released. There was probably no ideal time. If anything, they should have did it in January, February, and gone ahead and got it out. and let it be said. So we had enough time to have a vision forward. But now what this does, and what this does, and I think what is going to get buried in this is that now Democratic voters around the country don't know what to believe. Because all they're doing is saying, hey, this report, we can't verify. Well, what can you verify? What did happen? And what is happening? What is going to happen? What investments are you going to make? What did you learn from 2024 that you're going to apply, not in 28, but this year? Because stuff is happening falling around now. And like, we're scared that we're not even going to have a free and fair election. So I think this is a time where I'm glad this is out. I do think we should move on past some of this, but we do need to take some learnings in terms of, hey, we need to invest in all 50 states. We need to invest in rural communities as much as we need to do in cities. We need to invest in Black-owned media and Latino-owned media and Asian-owned media. We need to invest in the people who actually prop this party and keep this party up. We need to get out and knock doors now. We don't need to just spend money on traditional TV. There are so many different tactics and ways to reach people, not just through media, but also through digital organizing, relational organizing, real time. And we need to do it now and at the highest level. And you need to communicate a vision on how we are going to stop being gunned down in the streets, and how we can make sure that every single person who wants to exercise their right to vote, whether it's through early vote, whether it's through the mail-in ballot, or whether it's walking in the polls on an election day and not having to fear ICE stopping them or snatching them off of the street, like, those are the things we need to be focusing on and learning from that, as opposed to dropping an unabridged report and then still giving us no direction and no answers.
But one of the things that really jumps out at me on this, Greg, is this. And it's just being very honest. And folk talk about Israel and Gaza, obviously what took place on October 7th, 2023, played a huge part in this. But you also got to go back before that. The reality is, the moment that Joe Biden was sworn in as president, folk complained about him being too old. That was consistent. And his team, his White House team, did not help matters by essentially shielding him and hiding him. Interviews, news conferences, things along those lines. And so that thing got exacerbated. You just can't, like, I'm sitting here and I'm not sure if, let me just see if this is working properly. So I'm trying to type into the report how often age was mentioned. That was also part of the deal. Democrats cannot ignore the reality that how Joe Biden was perceived with his age was different than how Trump was perceived. And that was also an issue. So when your numbers are soft already, anything that happens is going to exacerbate it. And so that happens. So you cannot confront an election if you don't acknowledge that that was an issue.
It's true. Roland, I do think, though, that circumstances have shifted since that election.
Yep.
I love what Representative Booker said. He said, my message has remained consistent. The circumstances around me have changed. And frankly, the Democratic Party apparatus is soft white nationalist compared to the hard white nationalists of the Republican Party. And I understand people who work inside that system, who fight against it, who go along with it. All of that to me is increasingly irrelevant. We see this. AIPAC, for example, poured millions into getting Thomas Massie out the paint while people are talking about defying Trump. No, they flooded the zone with money to get Massie out. But that old trick doesn't work anymore with human beings. And by that, I mean, I'm not talking about white nationalists in the Republican Party who celebrated the primaries Tuesday night. I mean the general elections. What do I mean by that? Yes, what happened in October, that was terrible. But Bibi, the international killer, is the head of a pariah state now. Circumstances have changed. AIPAC doesn't have that kind of muscle anymore. Ask Annalisa Mejia in Jersey. I was in Jersey last Thursday night at Essex County Community College there. Africana Institute celebrated 25 years. And all the viewers of Black Star Network told me to come back and tell you how much they support and they're with you and they donate and they had to bring the Funk Fan Club. And those people went out and voted for Mejia, who had her path cleared because AIPAC dumped all this money in there and had unintended consequences. Ask Chris Rabb in the Pennsylvania 3rd, the impact of going with the Working Families Party, part of the coalition that Zohran Mamdani used. The Democratic Party is just a delivery system. And Booker is on that same thing. His integrity in saying, I'm not taking PAC money, we're going to get lobbyists out of Congress. That message is hitting different. So I think that what we're faced with now, yes, the Democratic Party, sure, it's inside baseball. The money issue is clearly an issue with advertising. But guess what? The Democratic Party is increasingly looking like a delivery system. And what I mean is there was a sister there as I was watching the coverage as you were covering from Montgomery. There were some sisters who came down from Tennessee. They had red Tams on, remind me of the economic freedom fighters out of South Africa. And this one young lady was like, I don't give a damn about no gerrymander. I don't care about, and then when Latasha in the interview with you said, this ain't about citizenship. This is about building a different kind of society. Guess what? About the Democratic Party, and we never have. What we care about is our self-determination and our liberation struggle. And if we need to use you as a delivery system, we will. You need to certainly redistribute that money. But if you smart-ass white boys think we're going to somehow be beholden to whatever your political philosophy is, I think Booker can win in Kentucky, but it's going to be based on organizing and people. I think that as we saw in Pennsylvania with Bob Brooks in the Pennsylvania 7th, I think the thing now is trending toward running away from both parties, but using them as a delivery system. We've seen it with the Tea Party. We've seen it with the MAGA movement in the white nationalist side. And I think we're increasingly beginning to see it in the Democratic side with people who say, we'll just use you to get on the ballot, but we're not listening to none of y'all.
And what you just nailed is what I am consistently saying. When I listen to these loudmouth yahoos who love to say, oh, you're a shield, you're this, oh, you're just speaking for Democrats. As you said, it's a delivery system. It's a delivery system. Yeah. And I'm not dumb like these loud mouths are. This is very simple. But when I was coming in, it's an increasing number of these silly Simons out here who are touting MAGA and saying, oh no, and then they want to use all the talking points, Republicans into slavery, the radical Republicans, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, all that. They always skip over the Lily White movement. And they go through all this sort of stuff like this here. And I always go, okay, but can you talk about 2026? Is Project 2025 an anti-Black agenda? Yes or no? If you want to convince me that the Republican Party is best, pull the panel back up. If you want to convince me the Republican Party is best for economics, okay, well then explain to me how the massive Black job losses have happened. Explain to me how in the last year of Bush, of Biden, Harris, Black-owned businesses got $10 billion, a record, in federal contracts. It was only 2%, so I'm not happy with 2%, but it was a record. It's 1.2% under Trump. So please explain to me how we have more money in our pockets because of Donald Trump. I showed yesterday Trump's platinum plan, that tinfoil plan. I showed yesterday how he has diversity training for cops in his platinum plan. That was in 2020. Can y'all tell me what happened when it came to diversity when he went back in January 2025? I showed in the platinum plan how he touted doing things with Black farmers. Can you tell me, all y'all Negro Black conservatives, especially y'all Black men, how he won't even have John Boyd at the meeting? See, we ain't gonna deal with emotion, okay? When Stephen A. says, I wish for one election, we all vote. First of all, that's stupid. Why would we self-lynch? Why would Black people all vote for the Republican Party during an election to further disenfranchise ourselves? That literally is the Republicans would say, man, they got to be stupid. If you thought Trump was when he said, thank y'all for not voting, they probably would say, they got to be dumb as hell. They voted for us and we screwing them over. That's stupid. See, so I'll debate any of these black conservatives, any of them, and we can go through the undeniable facts and say, is their agenda anti-black? It's undeniable. So if the Republican Party's agenda is anti-black, and I only got two choices, well, then who do you think I'm going to vote for? Which now means that if I vote for Democrats, as Greg said, that's the delivery system, I now, after the election, have to continue to apply pressure to make sure you do it.
That's right.
I'm just going to use what Republicans did. Right. Guess what? The Republican base even pissed off Trump when they demanded release the Epstein files. Why? Because Republican candidates ran on it. Let me say it again, y'all.
That's right.
The Republican base lit his ass up. Why is Donald Trump right now, why are his numbers so low? Because the Republican base said, we believe you when you said you were against wars. And now your ass do what you did to Venezuela and what you did to Iran, and you're threatening to overthrow in Cuba. That's also why his numbers are there. So he's actually facing criticism from his base. And let me be perfectly clear. And see, this is where Democrats always mistake. The Republicans will be pissed off with him, but they're not going to sit elections out. Right. Because what they'll say is, you're pissing me off right now, but we still want power. So if we keep you in power, then we're going to pound on you for 2 more years to get us what we want. The mistake that we make, meaning black people, and the mistake that progressive whites make is we go, I ain't voting. Thus, guaranteeing they're going to win.
That's right.
The only reason they keep winning is because they're winning with fewer votes. So we actually help their agenda when we check out of a process. It is a delivery system. And you've got to be stuck on stupid to not understand that when it comes to a delivery system, the job is, how do I take advantage of the delivery system? And checking out is not the answer. Gonna go to a break. We come back, we're gonna talk about a new poll that breaks down how black men, especially young black men, feel when it comes to voting. We'll do that next. Don't forget, support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. If you want to contribute, please do so via Cash App. Use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. If you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com. Text a money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003 70196. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo RM Unfiltered. Zelle. Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, folks, let me be real with y'all. If you are on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, kill the music. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If there's a better plan out there, well, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. No games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved on average $1,100. Folks, it takes just 20 minutes with a real person. It's completely free. So do me a favor, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281. I announced this yesterday. My parents, they called and told me, hey, they're already gonna be using Chapter. No lie, they sent me a text. And so this is about achieving savings for our people. A lot of you are 50 plus. And so if you have parents and grandparents, or if yourself, if you're impacted by what I'm talking about, I want y'all to give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281 and connect with someone you can trust. I'll be right back.
They've been trying to erase black political power since Reconstruction. Now the Supreme Court is helping them finish the job. First came Shelby County versus Holder in 2013, the ruling that gutted the Voting Rights Act. Then came Brnovich in 2021, another ruling, another piece torn away. Now comes Calais, the case civil rights leaders warned could cripple the last major federal protection against racial vote dilution. And within days, Tennessee eliminated its only majority black congressional district. Louisiana, South Carolina, Alabama. The same strategy is spreading across the South. The old Jim Crow used poll taxes and literacy tests. The new Jim Crow uses gerrymandered maps, voter roll purges, polling place closures, and court rulings that make black communities politically invisible. 1965 was Freedom Summer. This is Freedom Summer 2.0, because they are still trying to erase black political power, and we will not bow.
This is Bill Duke, and you're watching the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Men Vote released a new poll highlighting an engagement gap among young black men in key states as we approach the 2026 midterms. The research from Hit Strategies, based in D.C. by my man Terrence Woodbury, conducted a multi-state survey showing that while most black male voters understand the importance of voting, many are still undecided about participating in this year's elections. The findings are based on polling 1,636 black men ages 18 to 45 across Georgia, Michigan, Mississippi, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina. Michael Bland, Executive Director of Black Men Vote, joins us right now. Michael, glad to have you on the show. So,
Roland, thank you, my brother. Glad to be here with you.
Okay, so when we say they're not committed to voting, what does that mean?
Look, I think it's what we all know, Roland. Bottom line is we have to give them a reason to vote. And when I say they, Democrats don't have an economic message. We don't have a message for them to vote. And the reality is 18 to 45, some of the messages that resonate with you and me don't resonate with the brothers between 18 and 45. It's just, one, they live in the biggest disinformation market that we've ever seen in our lives. And two, there's a relationship gap with our politicians that it just doesn't exist. And so they don't see the way that government benefits them, the way that this claim that democracy has benefited them. They don't know what democracy is. So, I think there's a lot of work that we have to do, but that comes from the disinvestment that we don't make into institutions that serve us, black men, black women, minority voters, right? There's a late game that we play. And that's where we're getting caught with our hands, or our tail between our legs.
So you and I saw you, we were in Montgomery.
Yeah, it was good. We had a good time.
And I'm downstairs, I'm trying to check in. A brother behind the counter, black man, Alabama State student, sports marketing major. And one, he had no idea who I was, and that's fine. I never assume anybody know who I am. I always introduce myself. But as we got to talking, he wasn't even aware, not only of the show, he wasn't aware of the march that was happening literally 2 blocks from where he worked. And as I kept talking to him, he kept saying, a lot of students at Alabama State don't know. When I mentioned that I was on the campus last year, he said, man, a lot of times we have no idea who comes on campus. And he was sharing right there how a lot of them are simply not engaged. They don't watch the news. I began to ask him, where do you get your information from? He mentioned TikTok. He mentioned Instagram. Go to my iPad. Y'all laid out that YouTube, that first of all, half of young men are active news consumers. Just 6% avoid news. But you say that your poll, YouTube was a dominant civic information channel. 90% use YouTube at least multiple times a week, and a majority identify YouTube as a place They go for breaking political news. Now, the reason I understand that, because when we talk about black men, if I pull the dashboard right now and look at my analytics, and I click audience, give me 1 second. In the last 28 days of this show, our audience, male, is 57.6%, female is 42.2%. And I know when I get stopped, brothers are stopping me all around the country. Man, I love the show. I love the content. So this idea that they're not news consumers, as your poll lays out, is simply not true.
That's right. And listen, Roland, it was shocking to me that that's where they land for their media, right? That's where they land for the news was YouTube. It was very shocking to me. And I tell you, one of my proudest things, or probably the thing I'm most proud of is being a dad, being a girl dad at that. And so oftentimes I have these conversations with my girls, where do you get your news from? Where do you get your music from? Where do you find new music? I struggle trying to find new music. And then learning that YouTube really is that outlet. I don't know if it's as much as they're not information taking as we do. I think they're consumed with so much, and that what's important to us is relatively not important to them. And that's why I think the dynamics, when we think about, I heard you talk about the autopsy, but what was important about this research is when we talk about black men and precision, tactical, scientific data, and how we reach black men, that's why we had to do this research, because a lot of times we were just assuming that they were getting their news from X, or that they were listening to X platform. And so I'm happy that, happy to work with Terrence Woodbury and his phenomenal team at Hit Strategies. But more importantly, I thought it was, really advantageous for me as the executive director to say, hey, let's really, unlock this thing with a scalpel and find out where our brothers are getting their information from. And moreover, that media market, the last persuadable base that's left in this country, which is 18 to 45-year-old black men. Where are they getting their news from? Because we also know they are the biggest consumers of disinformation. So there's a lot of work we got to do, and there was a lot of work in trying to unlock that.
Identified 6 segments of black men. And so go to my iPad. Base Dems were the largest group, 31%. Millennials and Gen X Harris voters in 2024. High likelihood of voting in 2026. And I'm going to go actually by percentage. The next highest percentage were Trump voters, 19%. Trump voters in 2024, mixed likelihood of voting in 2026. Next was young supporters, 16%. Gen Z Harris voters in 2024, high likelihood of voting in 2026. Next was disengaged and demobilized, 13%. Voted for someone else, were ineligible to vote, or did not vote in 2024, 50-50 or lower likelihood of voting in 2026. Next, 12% voted for distrustful voters. Voted for someone else, were ineligible to vote, or did not vote in 2024, high likelihood of voting in 2026. Then 9% of respondents, Harris voters in 2024. This was sympathetic but uncertain, 50-50 or lower likelihood of voting in 2026. When you saw that, what jumped out at you?
I got to raise more money. I have to raise more money. And the reason why I say that, it is segmented out so much, and we wanted that. To me, what really jumped out to me was there are massive gaps, but there are ways that we can fill the gaps. And one of the things that we know, to be true is this notion of whether they're informed or uninformed. I think the message that resounds the most, and this even goes from the town halls that we were doing in 2025, is that black men, younger black men in particular, feel that folks are just talking at them, and they're not giving them a reason not to vote. When you look at the Trump voter, or the young Trump voter, it wasn't surprising to me. As you know, Roland, I was part of the Harris campaign. And so, when we saw this late invitation, we saw this late surge of, black men may go this way, or they may go this way or that way. But it wasn't surprising for me to see that they voted for Trump, because to them, what they see in Trump is economic prosperity. And they don't see that. What they see in the Democratic Party is living in the land of about to do. We'll almost get there. It takes time. And for them, when they're looking at their pockets, particularly now, and that's why I think we're going to see this, we'll continue to see the shift, back to, because we know them to be center left, we'll continue to see the shift for them moving over. But what we know is that what is going to matter most is the economic message. And so clearly the economic message from Trump resonated more than it did from the Harris campaign.
But here's what's interesting, and this is, I think, part of the Democrats' problem. Trump was lying about economics. The reality is numbers don't lie. The last 5 Republican presidents put us in a recession.
Absolutely right.
There's been more job growth in America under Democratic presidents, Carter, Clinton, Obama, Biden, than Republican presidents. I mean, the numbers are stark. But Republicans have successfully created the illusion that they are fantastic for the economy. And I think that's because what Republicans do, they tout tax cuts for corporations and businesses as economic progress when we know that only impacts the top 1%. And so what I've always said, what Democrats got to figure out is, how in the hell do you lose an economic argument when the data is actually with you? And so also I believe, and I've been saying this for the longest, and we discussed it earlier with this autopsy report with Ashley, and that is this here. You cannot talk to black people in the final 2 months.
That's right.
And I got no problem saying this. In November 2023, when Vice President Kamala Harris hosted a dinner with black men, it was an off-the-record dinner. What I said, and I've said this publicly, so it's not like this is the first time I'm saying this. I said then, y'all must start in January. And how I broke up the year, I said January to July must be engage, enlighten, educate, and informed. I said in every one of these battleground states, in every single city, every single week, there has to be civic education discussions, teachings, whatever, walking people through what you did, what you accomplished, and then what you want to do. I said, and you got to be making that investment. I said, January to July. Your convention is in August. And then you shift to a different strategy. I've said that to her. I've said it to people running for Senate, people running for Congress, people running for local. I said, because we're no longer, and then the autopsy today confirms that you have to be, what Republicans are doing, they are engaging their people year-round, constantly driving information, where Democrats, election's over, I'll see you in a year and a half, that ain't gonna cut it.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that is, I've been doing this don't let the curly hair fool you, and let's pay attention to the grays. I've been doing this for almost 20 years. And I've said this repeatedly ad nauseum, going all the way back since 2009 when I was on the, when I was an organizer with the Corzine Weinberg campaign. Late invitations are for fools. And that's a word that Johanna Hayes has said all the time, late invitations are for fools. And we only entertain from September to November. And whether it's a national campaign or the statewide, and then they go back out, do whatever, raise a bunch of money, do a lot of events for politicians, and they forget actually the people who got them elected. That's the problem. And you look at organizations like ourselves, and there's so many others that are doing great work. And what we hear from a lot of time from donors is there'll be late money and money is coming. Now, that's the problem. So how are we supposed to engage? You look at this report and you say, well, Mike, tactically, how are you going to engage them? Well, part of the reason why we did this report was to prove that all year substance, all year engagement is what is going to win elections. If I only entertained my wife or my partner only 3 months out of the year, is she going to talk to me? Is she going to be engaged with me? No, absolutely not. It's the same thing about courting voters. And I don't know why we think this is just a quick fix, or just, as some folks would just call it, a quick marriage or a kiss in the middle of the night. This is dating. This is long-term engagement. And it's something that we refuse to do as a party. And I don't get it. It's very disturbing. And then we sit and live in the land of...
It's not hard to understand, Mike. It's not hard to understand. I'm telling you. See, we got to be honest, and there's some black people watching, and y'all need to go ahead and get out of y'all feelings what I'm about to say. And this is what people have to understand, okay? The strategy since 1965. The strategy from 65 to 2008 was the same, pretty much the same. No, I'll say 65 to 1988, the strategy was the same. And that strategy was black churches talk to black groups like NAACP. We're going to speak to social programs. We're going to speak to the needs in black community. We're going to speak to housing. We're going to speak to food. We're going to speak to healthcare, those things like that. And then what happens? Reverend Jackson wins in 1988. He then says, no, you have to actually campaign a different way. So from 88, 2008, that was a strategy. Then Obama comes along, and this is where things change. Obama says, I don't need that black ecosystem. He literally said it. His campaign literally said it. Now, he was correct. He was correct. Because the fervor of black people to vote for the first black president was on a different scale. We showed the data in terms of the turnout data, and it's right here. It's right there. You see it right there where it peaked. The blue line is black people. You see right there where it peaked. That's 08, 2012. It's never been higher. Since 1980, it peaked right there. It got close in 2020, but it peaked in those years. So what then happened? Obama runs for 2012. He didn't need the ecosystem. I was saying in 2007 and 8 when he was running, say, bruh, y'all, he only gonna be there max 8 years. You're gonna need the ecosystem. The reality is the black turnout strategy was obliterated when Obama ran for president. The white operatives operated after 2012, 2016, they operated as if he was still running.
That's right.
That's what happened. And here's why it's in the data. There was an 8-point gap between black women and black men for Obama in 2012. The first sign of black male erosion was in 2012. I discussed it on my show then. I said, y'all, black men said they were not satisfied with what Obama did in the first 4 years. But because the number was still at high 80s, folks were like, oh, that's no big deal. It increased in 16. People, a lot of sisters were like, oh, it's misogyny. I said, misogyny is a part of it. It doesn't fully explain the erosion. The erosion continued in 2020. And the erosion continued in 2024. It's because they were not paying attention to what black men were saying, and they were still running a 2008 strategy that does not work in 2024. It's not going to work in 2026 or 2028.
Roland, you said to the brother in the hotel lobby, you asked him, what is the biggest professional market? And he said MLB, and then you had to school him and let him know it was the NFL.
Yeah, because the brother was a sports marketing major, and I was like, bro, you might need to know your business if that's what you're majoring in.
Right. And so what I take from that concept, and I said this to members of our team and members of our board, I'm a Raiders fan. For better, for worse, I know you're a big fan of Houston. We won't go there, but I'm a big Raiders fan. What I know about Al Davis is similar, and we can learn something from Al Davis in politics. When it doesn't work, he changes it. He fires people. He changes the head coach. So the fact that we're still using a playbook that has been antiquated, right, outdated, and doesn't work, and then we try to infuse the DC level, and Cameron talked about this, the DC Inc. Consulting group think tank to say, hey, here are the issues that matter most to this group, and this group is going to get you over the line. Don't worry about it. This group is going to stay home, or this group is going to come home. It's similar to when folks are saying now the South has something to say, and they do have something to say. And why are we not surprised that the South turned red? Well, there was there was an unequivocal divestment, if you will, in Southern politics. Look, Roland, you saw the article. I'm old enough to remember when Louisiana, when Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, these states were blue states. And all of a sudden, why did we take why did we remove those infrastructures there? Why did we remove the political powers there, the black politicals? Why did we remove them out of there, right? And we're wondering, like, how do we get it back? Certainly, this is the same thing, not only with black men, but the question, honestly, look, and then this is my expertise is black men, but the other subgroups that are now leaving the party, you have to give us a reason to vote for you. We're just not coming because we're Democrats or Republicans. The world has changed so much. And if we haven't learned anything from COVID, is that the world has changed so much, even more so politically. So why haven't we adjusted? To me, that's the biggest problem.
Let me also add this. I'm going to add this before I go to my panel with their questions. And again, it's going to step on some toes, and I really don't care because I'm used to that. There are a lot of black men who are also angry at Democrats because of black girl magic. See, I ain't got a problem saying it. And I've had conversations with many sisters who kept assigning everything to misogyny. And I said, you can't do that. And I'm like, take it from me as a black man. I know the conversations that I have. And so what I've had to say to brothers is, brothers, you're offended by black girl magic. You're offended when people say that black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party. It's also factually correct that black men are the second largest voting bloc of the Democratic Party.
That's right.
And a lot of these brothers are upset because I had a brother who told me, who was running in Texas, he said, you ain't got no shot in running if you're a black man. You got to be a black woman. And I was like, where did you get that from? And he started explaining to me. And this is what I said to him. And this is the reality, Michael. A lot of these brothers are pissed off that these sisters have organized themselves, have mobilized themselves, are raising money, are doing what they're supposed to do. And then when I look over here, I see a whole bunch of brothers with attitudes and sour faces. And my response to them is, well, why aren't you organizing? And I've said, listen, I got no problem. I've said to Khalil, bruh, win with black men. Yes, we had that great call the day after Kamala, Joe dropped out. I said, but the meetings have to continue. Black women, the reason Win with Black Women is so potent today is because they started as the purpose was to get the nomination for Kamala Harris. They achieved their goal in 2024. Then they said, well, let's keep going. In 2020, they said, well, let's keep going. And the problem that I see with black men, and Michael, I've told this to many black men, stop bitching that sisters have organized and mobilized, and you got to do it yourself. And if we really want to be honest, Michael, and I'm about to step on some serious toes, the reason many of these brothers don't want to organize and mobilize, because historically, when it came to organizing and mobilizing, it was the sisters who were doing the planning. I'm just going to call it what it is.
Roland, I can't, listen, I won't disagree with you. I would tell you this, some of my biggest mentors and some of my folks that I revere in this game are black women. I can go from Shavonna Sumter, I can go to Judith Finellis, I can go on and on. I mean, the names that can speak ad nauseum. Regina Thomas, my mother, Kelly Ledette. And even you look at the civil rights movement, they were the ones who were really organizing. They were writing the letters. They were, providing a place and, providing a place to stay. They were making the food. They were really, they're the pillars in the black church, right? And so we often, we look at that and we do get upset. The reality is, brothers have not put our egos to the side. And I am not ashamed to say, in particular where black men vote. Some of the backbone and a lot of our brass comes from black women that work alongside us and black women that work internally with us. So I'm not ashamed to say that. They do an amazing job. And it's not to say that we can't recruit brothers to do that. I will say this, Roland. There is a gap, at least that I've seen in the last 12 to 14 years. There is a gap from, I would say, black women operatives to black male operatives. I remember in 2014 when I was a field director for Congresswoman Esty in CT5, I sat in a room. We had a GOTV training for all the frontline races. There were about 64 frontline races that year. We were trying to retain the House. And Roland, I was one of 2 black men in that room. One of 5 black folk in that room. So that also goes to the structural, that doesn't show up in the autopsy, and it probably wouldn't show up in the autopsy. And that's a whole nother conversation, how certain parties have alienated black political principles, and yet that's why they've gone on to do other things.
But here's the deal. But here's the deal. I'll never forget, after the 2016 election, when Hillary lost, it was a group of black women, I'll find the article, who wrote a letter and demanded a meeting with Tom Perez. I sat there and I said, that's what you're supposed to do. Guess who did not do that? Black men. In 2020, I remember it vividly, there were a group of black men, I was on the text chain, who were trying to do the same thing to send to the DNC after the 2020 election. The letter never got sent. I got the text messages. I remember the conversation. And so what I am saying to brothers in Chicago, Houston, in Memphis, in Tallahassee, Miami, in Jackson, in Charlotte, all over, if you want more out of politics, what you can't do is go, ain't nobody talking to me, ain't nobody call me, ain't nobody ask me. What you gotta do is align with Win with Black Men, your organization, Mondale Robinson's organization, or start your own locally, but it ain't gonna happen if black men are not organized and mobilized.
Well, let me take a page, if I may. Let me just take a page out of Kenny Diggs' book. He's a board member of ours. We had a meeting, and one of the things he said, and I'll say this, he said folks need to start their own organization. We ain't got time to reboot shit. We ain't got time to live, we just don't have time for that, right? We live on the clock. We are on borrowed time. And I will say, if you want to get something done, you better find you a badass sister, and I think about my old chief of staff, Amber Davis Prince, who we wanted to get things done and move things along, and leaders of color. I mean, she can move things overnight. And so I say this, she used to say all the time to us when we ended our calls, nobody is coming to save us.
Right.
Black men, nobody is coming to save us. You mentioned Khalil, you mentioned Mondale, I'll throw John Thompson, I'll throw him in there, and Georgia, who's doing a phenomenal job down there, right? And so we've got to align with our groups. There is no beef with our groups, and we all have similar missions, but our job is to get black men over the finish line. Our job is to teach black men how to advocate, because I want to remind you on this show, Roland, and I remind everybody else, just like I did at this conference today, black men are the last persuadable base left. So when we come out here and we spout dumb shit to 18 to 45-year-old black men that has no merit, makes no sense, that's when we get in trouble. And that's when we do these things as Dems. And the thing that we usually do as Dems when we get a layup is we block our own shot.
Well, that's why I was critical when Obama made that comment about why black men were not supporting Kamala Harris. I'm sorry, he was just wrong. He got lots of pushback. Absolutely. And I was told that he called several brothers. He ain't call me. He ain't gonna never call me. He called several, because I'm gonna be way too honest. He called several brothers to get their advice and counsel, and it was a screw up because it wasn't solely because she was a woman. I am not dumb enough to act like there are not black men and Latino men and white men who will not support a woman. That exists.
Right.
That wasn't the only reason. But I just still keep saying to black men, hey, stop waiting. You can't get an attitude because sisters are doing their thing. And if you...
That a lot of this information really gets to these local state legislature candidates. I think so much is going to be spent and sent and focused on the Senate races, the congressional races, maybe a few governor races. But we're getting decimated in these state legislatures, and they really need to be able, local Democrats and local parties, whether they're black, white, or whatever, need to be able to talk to black men in their local areas. How do you plan to make sure you get this information up and down and throughout, up and down the ballot?
Man, Cam, thank you for that question. I don't sleep. I just take long blinks. That's part of it. That's the first one. The second part is working with great people. I know Roland talked about black women, working with great people like Crystal Spann, the South Carolina Democratic Party executive director. And, leaning on her help, leaning on her institutional knowledge on how to connect me to other folks. And we have other coalition partners around the country that we're working with to ensure that not only do we put this in the hands of just to win legislatures, this is the first piece of a roadmap for us to really win and do what we need to do in community and connectivity. So, and look, this is also to the folks, who donate to what we do. This is the first phase to show, listen, we've taken the time to do the science. We spent an inordinate amount of money on this because it is that important to me. We can live and we can guess and we can assume, but just like we also say, black men aren't monoliths. I would never assume Mike Bland is the black man that can make all decisions for black men. I need to hear all different kind of stakeholders from all over the country and ensure whether, young, old, middle-aged, educated, uneducated, rural, suburban, urban voters, I need to hear from them, right? The disfranchised, I need to hear from them. And so it's my job to, no matter who can connect us, not just on the state level, because I think we always think, hey, let me talk to a, state party chair. I'm looking for young, young mentor group, young groups that do mentoring, young groups that are really, really in the community and really, really rooted in supporting young black men. I'm talking about AYF, AAU coaches, travel baseball teams. These are the folks that we're trying to communicate with to get this message to and express not only the importance of voting, but what's at stake in this election. And working with you, Cam. So I got to raise more money so you can help us.
Nicole.
Yeah, I thought this study was incredibly insightful. And I want the viewers to remember that this is not about black men versus black women. This is not a competition. This is about black people versus the white power structure. And so for the black women campaign managers, leaders, organizers that are watching this tonight, what are some key things that they should take away from this study so that they can support black men getting involved and getting to the polls?
Don't let the DC consultant class tell you that your only key groups is this XED group. Really push them on finding the statistical data that makes a difference. I think about Virginia 4. Virginia 4 is a district where, if you all remember, the congressional representative said, in reference to Hakeem Jeffries, and she laughed, yeah, I agree about his cotton picking hands. That's a district that we can flip. That's not on a lot of folks' radar. I will also tell them, don't be ashamed to push your consultants to really micro-target on the research that matters to your constituency the most. Because oftentimes we just think, oh, I got to talk to the suburban white voter or the 1 out of 3 voter. How about the voter that, hasn't voted, the Bernie voter who hasn't come home? And it is okay to give forgiveness to some of our brothers that voted for Donald Trump. I'll be the first one to say that because they are coming back. And what I will say is look at this is not only look at this research, but look at the brothers that Roland and Cam mentioned. Look at us as partners across the country because we have committed to say there is no beef with us. There is no gripe or there's none of that. Our job is to make sure not only our priorities are heard, but that the candidates across the country that are running, that they are running on the right platform that's going to get, as I like to say, Tyrone off the couch. And that should be the motivation for all, a lot of campaign managers across the country. Put that on a post-it on your wall, on your whiteboard, whatever you talk to your staff with. What are we doing to get Tyrone off the couch? Because the margins are going to be simply that close.
Absolutely. Greg.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Brother Bland. Just 5 seconds. I'm a teacher. I started teaching in 1987 in one form or another between K-12, undergraduate students, graduate students, law students, and then most people with not even going to school. And looking at your report, my question to you has to do with the form of messaging. I think that the messages are there. Anybody who spends 10 minutes looking at the issues should be very easily persuaded of what's in their best interest. But when the report says that music, memes, and news are the most popular topics, but when I look at the delivery systems, it's Twitter, it's Instagram, and it's YouTube. And I think, how do we approach this question of, I used to call it illiteracy. People have the capacity to read, but choose not to. I'm more convinced than ever, I see it every day in the classroom and in the streets, that it's illiteracy. People have simply had their diminishing developed ability to absorb information and critically think. How do we get at that, particularly since they're going to unleash even more tides of disinformation with AI and all this? How do we address that issue?
Okay, all right, so we lost him. We're going to get him right back. Something happened with our link there, so we're gonna reset that question. For folks listening, this is what I just really believe. So I need y'all to listen to where you are. There is no greater group or no greater person to reach when it comes to your black male group than your concentric circle. If you are a black man watching this show right now, and this applies to black women, this applies to white men, applies to any group, but I'm specifically saying you're a black man. Let me know when y'all got Michael Bland back. If you're a black man, you're watching this show right now, what you should say is, who are the black men in my group? The 4, the 6, 8, 10, 15, 20. So now let me then say, all right, I need to ask each one of these brothers in my group, did you vote in the last election? If the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, are you registered? If the answer is no to voting and no to registering, now you got to say why. Now you have to actually drive a conversation. This is akin to somebody saying, Pastor, if you could just talk to this brother at my job, and the pastor say, I don't work there. You work there. You should be talking to that brother at your job and say, come to church with me. That means that you have to be a witness. See, part of this is waiting on an external force from on high to essentially walk into my city, walk into my neighborhood, come down my block, walk down my street, knock on my door, walk in my house, sit in the living room, hold my hand, and walk me through it. No, you, to that brother watching, you can actually create your own little cell of 4, 5, 8, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, whatever the number is, and say, I'm doing my part. We got Michael Bland back. So this is how we have to be thinking. Michael, did you hear all of Greg's questions? If not, I can have him restated.
I did not.
Greg, restate, please.
Thank you, Roland. And thank you again, Brother Bland. Just very quickly, as I said, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher for now close to 40 years, one way or the other. And from K-12, high school, graduate student, oh, no, man, thank you. I mean, we're all educators in one way or another, and I see y'all do political education as well. My question is about literacy. My question is about messaging. I think that the messages are there. I think that, 5 or 10 minutes and just sitting and thinking about things after having consumed some information should clarify a lot of things for folk. But my question is, because I increasingly see, I used to call it illiteracy. People have the ability to read and choose not to. But now I'm trending toward thinking about it as illiteracy. They really don't have a developed capacity to absorb information and think critically. And when I'm looking at your report and you say that most people respond to music, to memes, And they say they're seeking news. What'd you say? About half the people seek news, and 44% get it from their feeds. And I'm looking at YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. I don't consider any of that as really being able to consume news and critically think. I see it as people just being stimulated and switching around. How do we address the question of illiteracy? And especially when disinformation is going to be a huge part. Yeah, there it is right there. And even as you said, the persuadable, 3/4, if the report is this right, 3/4 of the men polled said they are almost certainly are probably going to vote, and only 7% said they're not voting. So how do we get at the question of how we're consuming what appears to be data, what appears to be information, but it's really just kind of like a titillating kind of spectacle and this kind of moving image stuff that doesn't really foment critical thinking?
I think Roland, he prefaced this earlier in the conversation. The political game has changed. And again, I go back to COVID. Remember, COVID kept us in the house for in some parts for half a year to a year, and be it all, you look at some jobs are still remote, 5, 6, 7 years later, right? And so what did that force us to do? It forced us to constantly pick this thing up because we were bored. We were stuck inside the house. And that became a conditioning. That became a modern age, this is what I'm going to do out of boredom, or this is just now what I do. I sit by my phone and I get my information from my phone, right? It's part of what has killed your traditional newspapers. It's part of what has killed your traditional periodicals and your journals, because now the quick consumption, the 30-second media hit is now what's more relevant than sitting down, reading a newspaper. I was on a flight with a gentleman on the way here, older black gentleman. He was reading the newspaper. I said, "Wow, man, that's a lost talent." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Reading the newspaper." I remember Uncle David used to drive and read the newspaper at the same time. And I think that's one of the things, as we talked about the evolution politically, but just as our attention spans, not just as Americans, but as humans, is now predicated on is predicated on technology. Technology has made fools of us all. And, we rely on this thing that lives in our hand, the size of our hand. And so that's part of the problem. But in that problem, it has created, or in that crisis, it has created opportunity. And so that's why the research is based like this, because understanding that's where 18 to 45-year-olds, that's where they're mostly focused on. That's what's usually in their hand is their cell phone. So why have you in your hand? I need to learn how to communicate with you and figure out where you get your information from, be it all what information, because I can tell you who has done this research, maybe at the very least, not just with black men, but with Democratic voters, it's the other side. And so we wanted to have the opportunity to take the chance, because our job is to move black men and black families across the finish line as a whole. But we wanted to take our time to say, how do we communicate with black men 18 to 45 years old? And we learned that it is in technology, and it is in now, like you see, YouTube, Instagram, some even Facebook. And I didn't even think Facebook would pop up as the top medium.
Oh, yeah. Well, everybody forgets Facebook is a dominant force. Everybody, see, the shiny object, people think TikTok is all that. No, it's a ton of people who are on Facebook, and there's a ton of folk who communicate. And so what I tell people all the time, you got to be everywhere. When I meet people and they say, "Hey, how can we follow you on social?" And I go, let's see, we on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Spill, Spoutable, Fanbase, Tumblr. We on all those. And so my deal is, I don't care where you at, I want to reach you.
That's right. That's right. And look, and you have to know and think about it. You have to know and understand who lives on those platforms. We talked about TikTok. People say, "Oh, all young people on TikTok." No, it's not all young people. It's actually women, younger ladies. Those are the ones that are on TikTok. Black men are not on TikTok, right? And so you've got to understand those mediums, and social mediums.
Absolutely, Michael. Where can people go to read the full report?
You can go to blackmenvote.org. It is on our website. Again, blackmenvote.org. It's front and center on our website. And you could also, thank you. Pull it right there. So please dive in. And we're actually getting ready to go into our second phase of this research, which is so important, which will be focus group based. So again, Roland, I'm coming in this place with precision, with a scalpel, and there will not be, nobody can say to us that we don't know how to talk to black men or to find black men or to communicate with black men.
Absolutely, and as I keep saying, there needs to be black male-led, black male-only discussions taking place all across the country, teaching people, educating people, enlightening people, informing people. Listen, when all these crazy right wings, with these brothers pop up on Instagram, some people say, "Oh man, you should ignore those people." No, no, no. I'ma hop on their timeline and go, "You lying? This is the fact. That's a lie. That's a lie." People need to understand this is warfare. And we have to understand, if one brother is on those social media pages and being force-fed lies, we have to be countering with the truth.
Well, we got to stop showing up with a musket, right? This is 2026, and we're armed with all the data. We're armed with the right pieces. And I will not fight this warfare with old, traditional, antiquated, and outdated tools or references or even tactics. That's something we won't do. And I'll say this, Roland, I know we didn't touch on this in this part of the data, but what is important that I do want to say about black men that's not talked about the most. We have the lowest test scores. We have the highest, we have the lowest recidivism rates in terms of going to college. We're no longer going to college. We have the highest truancy rates. These are the things that are plaguing our younger black boys that are now coming up, right? And so our groups, you mentioned Mondale, you mentioned John, you talked about Khalil, and I'll even challenge others, to the sister who talked about what can we say to those campaign managers. Be grassroots led.
Yep.
Those are the problems. Those are mothers and fathers who are struggling with those issues with their young black boys, right? And be it all, every issue that you think is an issue in America that they'll get you to believe is usually the number one person that it affects in this country is a black man or a young black boy. So let me lend that piece of advice as well.
And what I said, the last point I'll make is this here. I've said this directly to black fraternities. I've said it to black male organizations. I have said it to Alpha. I've said it to Sigma Pi Phi fraternity, the Boule. I've said it to Omegas, Kappas, Sigmas, Iotas. I said to Prince Hall Mason, I don't care. It does not make sense having all of this infrastructure in potential capacity if it's not being used. And so I had a brother who hit me. He said, "Hey man, I want you to get to." He said, "I want you to get with our leader and come to the lodge, and we want to partner with D9." I said, "No." I said, "I'm not gonna have a conversation with Prince Hall Mason about partnering with D9 until I see an active engagement plan from Prince Hall Mason." See, that's what I'm real simple. You can't talk about partnering if you don't have your own plan within your group. And so what I am saying is we have these organizations, and what I'm saying, Prince Hall Mason, Alphas, Kappas, Omegas, Sigmas, Iotas, Sigma Pi Phi fraternity, the Boule, they've got to go outside of their internal group and connect and be able to invite brothers in. It can't just be an alpha conversation. It must be alphas are organizing this meeting and all are welcome to attend. That's what has to happen. Otherwise, we're just talking to the same people. And so I challenge everybody on this whole deal, and I ain't backing down from none of them. And again, if folk uncomfortable, well, tough. Take some Advil, you'll be all right. Michael, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, my brother. Good to see you.
All right. I'm going to go to a break. Before I go to break, folks, let me say this here. Let me be real. If you're on Medicare, about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off your confusion. A lot of black folks are confused when it comes to these plans out here. And look, we're used to it. We're no stranger to systems that don't have our best interests at heart, but we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. Folks, I want you to look in the chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. They're focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in one, the right one, they'll tell you, good, keep going. No games. Just last year, people who switch with Chapter save on average $1,100. Folks, it takes 20 minutes with a real person. It's completely free. All you got to do is call Chapter at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281 to connect with you to someone who you can trust. Going to break, we come back, Shop Black Star Network Marketplace segment. Back in a moment.
Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jameer Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
What's happening? This is your man, Motown recording artist Kim. You are watching the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, I was baking before I learned how to cook. My mom had a cake business, and so I learned that thing first. So check this out, OKO River Sweet Potato Flour Cake Mix. It's a simple recipe that originated in Guyana, South America, and it's part of a project to empower young agricultural entrepreneurs in Guyana who develop breakthrough agro-processed goods. Ashley Etienne is the CEO of the Economic Development Fund. She joins us right now to talk about OKO River and their mix, and so glad to have you here. So in my hand, I have a sweet potato flour cake mix. Okay, hold up. Let's see, right here. There we go. And then over here, so I have this. So all right. So both of these are sweet potato flour cake mix. All right. So walk me through. This says beta carotene and antioxidant packed, moist, light texture, old-fashioned taste, gluten-free, grain-free. So how did this all start?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roland. I'm so glad to be here. It started because I myself am not necessarily celiac. I don't have celiac disease, but I have an intolerance to wheat. And my family has a history of diabetes. And I also love cakes. I love baked goods. And that's on a personal side. On the business side, I run an incubator and accelerator that, as you said, helps agro-processors and other businesses in Guyana to succeed. And so we came across this particular product. It sort of wowed me. We brought the recipe here, tweaked it a little bit, brought it to the States. It's manufactured in New York and shipped all over the United States. And as far as the product itself, it's a riff a little bit on what you could do with sweet potato. So rather than the traditional sweet potato pie that we all love around the holidays, what we can do is have effectively pound cake texture, pound cake flavor, pound cake goodness, but with literally sweet potato as the flour. So for those of us who have any connection to agriculture, we know that potatoes have a tremendous amount of starch. You add a few other ingredients there, and it performs like flour. It is ground to a fine level like flour, and it's baked, and it is absolutely delicious. This product can make cakes, it can make cookies, it can make waffles, as well as cupcakes. And so we really are inviting those of us who love Southern food, who love Caribbean food, who love sweets, who love baking, to try it.
So in terms of how the product's made, so you talk about this development fund. So who makes the product?
Right. So we are essentially an intermediary for the agro-processors. So when we talk about agro-processors, we're talking about people who are baking in their homes, who come up with products in their homes. And that's great. And you can sell to friends and family. You can sell at your church in that way. But what you don't have is probably the capacity, manufacturing-wise, also from a branding perspective, from a marketing perspective, to be able to get your product out widely. And so we work with the owner of the intellectual property to identify a manufacturer who can produce the product at scale. And so using the recipe from the young woman in Guyana, who is the owner of this recipe, of the idea of sweet potato flour cake mix, we identified a wonderful manufacturer in upstate New York that does small batches, and they make the product on our collective behalf. And we've got a website up, and we also partner with some other folks, and we invite people to place their orders for the product. But we manufacture it through a third party here in upstate New York.
Is this the only cake mix?
It is the only cake mix presently, yes. And quite frankly, it's the best cake mix. So we are able to use other types of flours that come out of we call them root vegetables. So there's and other types of sort of starch-heavy things like cassava and so forth. But as far as the products out of Oko River, it's the sweet potato flour cake mix for us for now.
Well, I love me some chocolate, so let me know when y'all get some chocolate. All right, questions from the panel. Nicole, you go first.
Listen, I'm supposed to be on a diet. Now you got me sitting here thinking about cake. Ooh, goodness. So what has the response been like on your products? This is so exciting. I would love to try it myself, but what have people been saying?
Oh, please do. Please do. So it's a startup brand, and so we've been spending some time getting it in the hands of folks through taste testing, displays, getting out in the public to do that. And so those who have tried it absolutely love it because it's not overly sweet. But at the same time, again, you can customize it. You can add more sugar if you like. You can add all types. Roland, I heard you say that you love chocolate. You can add chocolate powder to it, cocoa powder, in order to chocolify the flavor. It is a really sort of indescribable in terms of its yumminess. But I guarantee you, I will say it like I know my own name. If you try this, you will really not be able to tell that it's not wheat flour, except that you won't feel that super heavy feeling in your stomach after you've had, lots of sugary baked goods that are typically made with flour. And there's no aftertaste, so that's really important too.
All right, Cameron.
I'm really excited about this. I know as I personally am looking to kind of improve my diet. What are you doing in terms of digital and social media and trends and so forth? Because baking, sweets, taste testing, showing people how to cook, there's so many different ways you can make just by making the cake or just by talking through it that you can get really creative with cakes and pastries and products like this. So what have you been doing there to think about other ways to really kind of engage and grow the interest online?
Sure. I mean, I think we're looking for all sorts of opportunities. Like I said, I think you guys know you're tremendous advocates of Black businesses and opportunities for Black people. It's really expensive to be in the marketplace. Direct to consumer, which is how we currently sell, is also costly because you've got to fight through the noise. Most people, when they're shopping online nowadays, stunningly, we're shopping on Amazon for food now, partially because of that Whole Foods integration. And so it makes it really difficult as a standalone brand, especially a Black-owned brand, to get onto those platforms. So it's typically that one would do Amazon or Etsy or whatever. So we look for really any opportunity to collaborate with other brands, be in showcases like this so that people can learn about this product. It's a really unique product. We have not come across anything like it in the United States thus far. It has a Caribbean flavor to it, but it also has a down-home Southern flavor to it. So it can reach across a lot of different demographics. Obviously, people who've got wheat intolerances or celiac disease and so forth. It's not vegan, but it's pretty healthy when you're talking about indulging. So to answer your question, we are looking for any and all opportunities. We try to do a lot of it ourselves, but it's difficult to break through, and we'd love to partner with others who would be interested, whether they're hospitality, establishments, people, bakers themselves. They can make the product and customize it as well and then sell it in their bakeries. So any and all of those opportunities are ones that we would be really thrilled to look into and partner on.
Greg?
Thank you, Roland. And thank you, Sister Carrington. I hope I got kicked off, so I hope maybe you've already answered this question. I was intrigued by the name of the product. I know there's an Oko River in Guyana, but I'm wondering if there's a particular link to Black folk. Okay, that's what I wanted to hear about, because I know I think in Yoruba, one of the meanings of Oko is farm. Could you tell us about the name? Then thank you.
Sure. So Guyana, the name itself, is an Amerindian word. That's the name of the population of people we call the first peoples in Guyana. And Guyana itself means land of many waters in one of the indigenous languages. And Oko is a tributary. It's a river in the western part of the country. And so it actually right now also is an area that is very rich in gold. So it's actually being mined quite a bit by a very large foreign gold mining company. And so for me, it was a tribute to those Amerindian people in that community. You may know, if you know anything about Guyana and the uprisings that took place in the 1800s, in some cases, very much like here in the States, the African people at the time collaborated with, hid with, and worked with the Amerindian population to escape the difficulties at the time, if I might say it that way. And so this product is intended to be a tribute to all of us who had to do our best under the circumstances at the time. But it's absolutely from Guyana, about Guyana, and about the people of Guyana, the indigenous and Afro and all others in the country.
All right, then. So, folks, again, Oko River sweet potato flour cake mix. You see it right here. Go to our marketplace at shopblackstarnetwork.com to check it out. We'd love to hear what y'all have to say about this here. Again, my mom is a big-time baker, so I'm sure she will be very interested in this. And so we go right there. You can get the mix right there on shopblackstarnetwork.com. Ashley Etienne, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. We appreciate it.
All right, then. Thank you so very much. Again, y'all go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. Folks, let me thank Cameron, Nicole, and Greg for being on today's show. I certainly appreciate it. Y'all have an absolute blast. Thank you so very much. Just a couple of more stories here, folks. Problems with establishing intravenous access for the lethal injection led to the postponement of the execution of a black man in Tennessee who may be innocent. Governor Bill Lee granted a one-year reprieve on Thursday after Tennessee officials halted the planned execution of death row inmate Tony Carruthers. The Tennessee Department of Corrections reported that execution staff was unable to establish the backup IV line required by the state's lethal injection protocol. Carruthers' attorneys indicated that officials struggled for about an hour to find a suitable vein before the execution was stopped. The current execution procedures, adopted in 2025, mandate that execution staff insert both a primary IV catheter and a backup IV catheter. According to the protocol, the primary IV is used to administer the lethal injection chemicals, while the backup catheter is reserved in case the first IV fails. Additionally, the protocol specifies that any failure of an IV line must be promptly reported to the commissioner. 57-year-old Carruthers was scheduled to be executed this morning for the 1994 kidnapping and murders of Marcellus Anderson, Delois Anderson, and Frederick Tucker in Memphis. His conviction was primarily based on witness testimony, claiming he confessed to the crimes. However, court records reveal there was no physical evidence directly linking him to the murders. All right, folks, time for Black Star Network headlines with Brittany Noble.
A Virginia judge dismissed charges against Ebony Parker, a Black former elementary assistant principal who had faced up to 40 years in prison. Parker was on trial in connection with a 6-year-old boy shooting his first-grade teacher in 2023. In today's ruling, Judge Rebecca Robinson said the court is of the legal opinion that this is not a crime. Parker was facing 8 counts of child abuse and neglect following an incident where a 6-year-old took a gun to Rich Neck Elementary School in Newport News and shot teacher Abigail Werner in the hand and the chest. Parker was accused of failing to protect the 15 children ages 6 and 7's Werner's class. Prosecutors claimed that Parker ignored multiple warnings from staff members and students who believed that the boy had a gun and posed an imminent threat on the day of the shooting. Last year, a jury awarded Werner $10 million after finding Parker liable for ignoring the warning signs, and the child had a weapon. And in 2023, the child's mother, Deja Taylor, was sentenced to 2 years in prison for her role in the incident. Taylor will begin her state sentence after completing 21 months on a related federal charge for which she was convicted of using marijuana while possessing a firearm. And in Georgia, Snellville police have issued arrest warrants for 2 former employees at Cool Kids Academy. This comes after police reviewed surveillance video that allegedly shows a child under 2 years old being struck and bitten by workers inside the facility. 54-year-old Teresa Blackwood faces child cruelty and simple battery charges for allegedly biting baby Mason. 22-year-old Trasia Cross is charged with simple battery for being seen on camera hitting the child in the head while he was crying. Mason's mother, Tykara Whitehead, was unaware of the incident while state caseworkers from the Department of Family and Children's Services visited her home May 14th to inform her about the allegations. She noted that her child's behavior had been changing for about a week before the troubling discovery. The 2 workers are no longer employed at the daycare. Students in Massachusetts are suing the state, claiming it has intensely segregated school districts. The lawsuit against the state alleges that Massachusetts is violating its own constitution by denying Black and Latino students equal educational opportunities. The lawsuit filed Wednesday in Suffolk County Superior Court says that the state policies have led to tens of thousands of students concentrated in racially segregated school districts. The suit claims that the state operates a 2-tiered school system in which a number of the highest performing schools in the country stand in contrast to school districts defined by concentrated poverty. The lawsuit asked the court to declare that Massachusetts is violating the students' constitutional right to equal education. And Chicago Public Schools plans to cut teacher positions and increase class sizes to address a $732 million deficit. While the exact number of teaching positions that may be eliminated is still uncertain, the Chicago Sun-Times estimates it could exceed 700. CPS also plans to reduce some assistant principal positions, but will allocate more funding for special education teachers. As a result of these changes, class sizes may increase next year. CPS is adjusting the student-to-teacher ratio to fund the schools, raising it by 1 student per grade. For instance, high-poverty elementary schools will now receive 1 teacher for every 23 students, up from 22 for 1 teacher this year. This is the first time in 3 years that CPS has proposed cuts that will directly impact classrooms. A conservative legal group sued the physician directory earlier this week. The group accuses the website Find a Black Doctor of illegally discriminating against physicians by limiting listings to Black medical professionals. The lawsuit filed on Tuesday in Manhattan federal court by Do No Harm and Colorado dermatologist Dr. Travis Morrill targets the site and its founder, New York dermatologist Dr. Nina Strand. The complaint alleges that the directory openly excludes non-Black doctors by restricting eligibility to Black physicians and dentists in active clinical practice. The group says the site promotes racial concordance, the idea that patients receive better care from doctors of the same race. According to the lawsuit, doctors seeking listings must submit personal and professional information, agree to terms of use, and allow the directory to retain and publish their data.
All right, Brittany, I appreciate it, folks. Don't forget, check out the Breakdown with Brittany Noble every day, noon Eastern, right here on the Black Star Network. The Breakdown with Brittany Noble every day, noon Eastern on the Black Star Network. Folks, that is it for us. Do me a favor. If you want to support our show, please do so by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. You want to contribute via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. It's also for credit cards. If you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com for details. Checks and money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003 7-0196. Of course, PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo's RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We got about 47,000 folks. A lot of y'all have sent checks. I'm still depositing these, and so this is the batch right here. So yes, I am going at it, but remember, y'all, it takes time to open up every envelope and then go through, sort, and then take a picture deposit it. It's a whole process. So please be patient if you send checks and money order. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, Samsung Smart TV. You want to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered swag or Black Star Network swag, please go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. Hats, t-shirts, get our merchandise. Our shirt, Don't Blame Me, Voted for the Black Woman. MAGA chose between woke or broke. They chose broke. Black-owned media matters. How you died does not redeem how you lived. So all of that, folks, go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. And all of these products you see in our studio, you see them right here. Of course, we're going to add our Oco River sweet potato mix to the bunch. We're going to have to get some more tables because, man, we're running out of space. I'm just going to sit it right here. Okay, sit on top of our books, the anime books. And so if y'all want to support these black-owned companies, all of these products here are black-owned companies that you can see on shopblackstarnetwork.com in our marketplace. And so again, this is us supporting black-owned companies. When you buy products from them from shopblackstarnetwork.com, you're also supporting this black-owned show as well. Don't forget, of course, download the app Fan Base. Follow me at Roland S. Martin. You can catch me there and support all the shows that we have. As I said, the Breakdown with Brittany Noble, every day, noon Eastern, right here on the Black Star Network. You can catch A Balanced Living, Reverend Dr. Jackie Hood Martin. You can catch that show every Tuesday. Of course, Other Side of Change with Bria Baker and Jamila Burley. You can catch that show as well. That's right, every Monday. We got that show. Then, of course, we've got... of course, Dr. Ebony Jade Hilton. Second Opinion with Dr. Ebony Jade Hilton. That's every Thursday. We've got the Black Table with Dr. Greg Carr every Friday. And also Roland's Book Club every Friday as well. And so be sure to check all of that out. And, folks, tomorrow, great show lined up. We got conversations with Congressman Jim Clyburn, Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver, and also Texas State Representative James Tallarico, who is running for the United States Senate in Texas. And so you're going to check all of that out on tomorrow's show. Folks, that's it. And don't forget, if you want to check out the folks at Chapter, do me a favor. If you want to look at the Medicare what plans that work best for you, give them a call. Give them a call. The number's on the screen, folks. 724-264-8281. 724-264-8281. 724-264-8281 for you to compare prices to get the best Medicare plan for you. That's it. I'll see you tomorrow right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Yes, representing my alma mater, Jack Yates High School in Houston. This is our 100th anniversary. And of course, it's chilly here too, so y'all know. First of all, y'all know I had the shirts made, and so got 87 on here the year I graduated, and then of course I got Mr. TV on the back, because that's what they called me when I was there, so I had to get that on here, and of course that matches up with what they called the brother when I was at JY. Y'all know how we represent.